In Austria and Germany, far-right parties are on the rise. The Freedom Party of Austria, or FPO, came out on top in the Austrian election in September last year. The Alternative for Germany, or AfD, is polling second at around 20% ahead of the German election on the 23rd of February. In this video, we'll look at how these parties are using language borrowed from far-right extremists, particularly on the topic of immigration. They are trying to normalize radical language, which could pave the way for the normalization of radical policies. Both the AfD and the FPO are best known for their harsh anti-immigration policies, and they both use the controversial term remigration. Remigration is often associated with far-right extremists such as Martin Sellner, an Austrian who spent his teenage years as a neo-Nazi and is now a leading figure in the ethno-nationalist identitarian movement. Sellner's vision of remigration involves the mass deportation of migrants and their descendants, including citizens who are deemed inadequately integrated into society. The aim is to create an ethnically and culturally homogeneous society, which basically means a society in which there are no or very few non-white people. The AfD and the FPO like to use the word remigration, but their actual policies on migration are far less radical than those of Martin Sellner. They are generally focused on increasing deportations of asylum seekers and foreign criminals, as well as restricting the rights of asylum seekers. In fact, they often use the word remigration as little more than a substitute for the word deportation. For example, the FPO's 2024 election manifesto called for the remigration of uninvited foreigners. This begs the question of why they are deliberately using the word. Do they want to be associated with far-right extremists? I think the answer to that question is yes, and that they use the word remigration as a kind of dog whistle. I also think their adoption of extremist language is a sign that their policies will become more extreme and radical over time. They haven't only embraced fringe extremist rhetoric on the topic of immigration, but also on things like climate change denial and COVID conspiracies. They are trying to push this rhetoric into the mainstream of Austrian and German political discourse. But going back to the topic of immigration, there are more signs in these parties' language that they might shift towards more radical policies. For example, the FPO states that it supports homogeneity and rejects diversity. It also claims that the people of the state are gradually being replaced by permanent mass immigration. This seems like a reference to the Great Replacement, a conspiracy theory popular with far-right extremists. The FPO and AfD's alignment with far-right extremist rhetoric is a sign that these parties will become more radical. What will start with ramping up deportations and restricting the rights of asylum seekers could develop into the passing of racist citizenship laws aimed at creating an ethnically homogeneous society. Although the policies of these parties are currently not this radical, they are trying to normalize extremist language. And we shouldn't be surprised if the normalization of extremist language leads to the normalization of extremist policies.